Back when I was a kid, I grew up with Sesame Street. It was a great show. It was great. The Muppets that were on there, Big Bird, Oscar, Bert and Ernie, everyone, Mr. Hooper, all the other people that have been on the show itself for many years. Some of the bits that they've done, it was always fun. And the years went on and things changed. I had someone I worked with who was my boss a long time ago. His son ended up in the opening. That opening, where kids are playing and all that. He ended up to be one of the kids. This was a long time ago. This was back in the late 80s that his son was able to be on there. Besides that, we sort of had a relationship with some of the people at the Children's Television Workshop. The late Carol Spinney, who's Big Bird and Oscar at the time period. If you've been a long time watcher on this channel on CutieCast TV, we brought in over Rabbit T. Rabbit and Friends, the old episodes for a while. That was a show I used to work on back in the 80s into the 90s. It ran for about 34 seasons. Until the producer of it and host of the show, Rich Concepcion, passed away. We still hold up flags for him every year because the show aired President's Day week in the 20th of February. We're up to in the 42nd year. We're in the 42nd year of the original anniversary of the original show, which was in the 1980s. But the thing about it is that we had relationships with Carol Spinney and some of the other characters, puppeteers on that show. We've had Carol contact us live on, because our show was live on cable TV. So he used to call up the show and stuff like that. Richard was able to go to the live set, which shot some stuff on the live set, behind the scenes stuff. If you haven't seen it, we have one where, our character, Richard Rabbit T. Rabbit, gets kicked out of the Children's Television Workshop studios by Telly Monster, which is really funny. Then we did another bit with them a couple of years later. Some fun stuff on there. Like I said, Carol also is no longer with us to that point. And the thing is that after a time period, Sesame Street moved away from PBS. Yeah, for quite some time, for a couple of years. Now, you were able to still see older episodes, and the new episodes were delayed hitting PBS for a little time as Warner, through HBO Max at the time period, had bought the rights to that. Now, there are several things going on right now. If you didn't see it this last week, there was a Senate subcommittee hearing on Doge with PBS and NPR. And the situation, they brought up a lot. They were saying like, oh no, if we don't get the money on there, we won't have Sesame Street and stuff like that. And some of the ridiculous stuff that you heard at this meeting, because understand, yes, PBS does have Sesame Street on there. They don't fund it. They buy basically the rights to air it. It's the same way as like anyone else who would buy a television program. Remember, PBS itself, if you ever watch their money drives or they have a situation, remember the government has been pulling away less and less every year. You have other entities have come forward, like the Ford Foundation, Carnegie Foundation, a couple of others, who also fund Sesame Street as well. Basically, the you have other people that fund money into the show, into a lot of the programming onto PBS and stuff like that. Whereas, does the government need to be funding PBS and NPR? No, not really. Not the way they've been acting as of late. All you got to do is look at some of the programming out there that they've put out. It's not like it used to be. Let me tell you, PBS is one of the places that I was able to see Doctor Who. Yeah, they had Doctor Who. I loved a lot of the British stuff that aired on PBS. They had Doctor Who, Dark Shadows, Blake Seven. I love Masterpiece Theater onto there, Mystery, a couple of other shows that were like really on there. Monty Python's Flying Circus, one of the big things that was shown on this channel. When you see these money drives, is that they need, and listen to what they say. They're here to buy programming, not for the production itself, to buy the rights to air it. And that's what it is. That's onto there. Because right now, Sesame Street is up in the air to the point, if you haven't realized that, Max through Warner, David Zaslav is not going to renew their contract for the next several years. I think this season is going to be the last, if I'm not mistaken, on there. I think that through 2025, I think 2026 on, I think that's it. It's done. And, this is the things that they've pushed out there. But, like I said, Sesame Street, as Newsweek put out, Sesame Street future is in jeopardy right now. Where's it going to go from this point? Do we let it put aside? Remember, we don't have the electric company anymore. We don't have Zoom. We don't have 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1 Contact. Many of the other TV series that I grew up with on this station, whether I lived in New York, whether I lived in Florida, New Jersey, I started in many different places. There was a time where it was really good education on there. Even they had deals with schools. There was like a system where basically they broadcast. They had a feed that was sent to schools directly. And you switched to a certain UHF channel during the day, and you were able to get this feed and you showed it to your students. There were stories, TV shows, and education, history to that point. But we're going to read into this. But before we do it, don't forget to comment on this. Throw a comment down there. Hit the like, share, and subscribe. It's very important that you do. We really do appreciate that. The future of the long-running children's TV show Sesame Street is in jeopardy after a U.S. House DOJ subcommittee called the chief executive PBS to Capitol Hill testifying Wednesday with a particular aim to wiping out its funding. Newsweek reached out to PBS and Sesame Street via email for a comment. Now, understand, like this Newsweek article is pushing out, is that they think that PBS is the main production house for Sesame Street. Sesame Street, Children's Television Workshop, Sesame Street Workshop, is their own nonprofit company. They produce it themselves. They get money themselves from many different entities, including Carnegie, including the Ford Foundation, and many others that fund it. At some point, basically, they had to deal with Max at Warner, which basically paid for the episodes onto there. But the major problem is now Sesame Street doesn't have really a home. Does PBS want to buy more episodes? It's a possibility. That's up to PBS if they feel it onto there. If they have the money to finance the situation on there. But still, when it comes down to the end, Sesame Street itself is funded outside of the PBS on there other than rights. Remember that. Put that in your mind. Sesame Street is a much beloved show that combines live action puppetry and animation, focuses on delivering free education programming to children. Not when you had it on Max. It is known for its beloved characters and have been running since 1969. The show airs new episodes on Max, previously HBO Max, under a deal struck in 2020, but its foundation education mission remains tied to public television, and episodes air on PBS after they air on Max. It's a little time period in between on there. The hearing, titled Anti-American Airwaves, Holding the Heads of NPR and PBS Accountable, will be led by Republican Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. The CEOs of NPR and PBS, Catherine Mayer and Paula Kurg, respectively, will testify at the hearing as they seek to maintain long-standing bipartisanship support control from Capitol Hill for the funding of public broadcasters around the country. The hearing, which comes part of a broader push from conservatives who view public broadcasting as an ideological slant and financially unnecessary, will see the two CEOs appear before the House DOJ subcommittee chaired by Greene. Ahead of the hearing, Green appeared on Newsmax saying, "We will be shining an intense spotlight on how Americans' hard-earned tax dollars have been used by PBS and NPR and the type of public broadcasters, programs, and radio shows they have been pushing across the country for decades. It has leaned further and further left," that is correct. All you have to do is look at the programming they are. Look at the kids' shows. What have they been promoting on there? Stuff that, some of it sexual orientation at some points. I mean, I remember that. What was the series? I'm trying to remember what series it was. They put a gay marriage in a children's thing. I mean, listen, nothing against gay people getting married. This is nothing to do on there, but it doesn't belong in a children's educational show. They complain about anime and animation and stuff like that sexualizes children. But meanwhile, you got PBS over there doing it under federal tax dollars. And nobody complains about that. But when they get defunded, they start screaming about it. President Donald Trump recently signaled his support for defunding PBS. Asked on Tuesday by a journalist he would be interested in defunding PBS along with NPR. Trump said, "I would love to do that. I think it's very unfair and it's been very biased." Sesame Street really receives less than $5 million a year in grant money from the U.S. government, according to The Hollywood Reporter, not through PBS. These are separate grants that are given because they are a nonprofit organization. This is the Sesame Street workshop itself. They gain on it. It's nothing to do with PBS. PBS in itself, buys the rights to air episodes of Sesame Street. It's the same way as if you buy episodes of Doctor Who, Masterpiece Theater, any other show that comes on there. Notice they push Sesame Street. Do you know how many other shows are on PBS? There's hundreds of other shows from Nova, National Geographic, some National Geographic specials, science shows. You have Daniel Tiger, old episodes of, sometimes they'll run an old episode of one of their older shows or educations on there. Not as much as they used to. They try to push also, and you hear the hearing, they've had Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers is no longer with us, and his show hasn't really aired on there. Online, on streaming, yes, there has been. Continuing on, the loss of funding could impact the future of the show. The discussion about funding and push to rescind it comes shortly after Sesame Street Workshop, the nonprofit organization behind the show, announced that it will be laying off 85 employees, which is roughly 13% of its staff, citing financial pressures. Yeah, this has nothing to do with the PBS. This has to do with the Warner Max contract, that they're not going further with this. And, of course, the cost of productions like this that have gone up to the point where, they have spent it a lot at the workshop. I can understand to make a good show like this, but there are other ways that they can do it because they have changed a lot. They're not like it used to be. CEO Steve Youngwood said in a memo to the employees that the decision was extremely difficult, but it was necessary to best position ourselves for growth in a rapid evolving media landscape. The layoffs came shortly after an announcement that the production will be leaving its longtime Manhattan location and relocating to a new undisclosed space, marking a further chapter in its transition. Yeah, cost in rent. There are things other than production costs. Basically your rent, your electricity. Those all have to come into that situation. To the point. President Donald Trump on defunding PBS and NPR, the kind of money that's being wasted, and it's viewed very biased view. I'd be honored to see it end. And this is what they're saying. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene on X, formerly Twitter, NPR and PBS have wasted millions of taxpayer dollars pushing Democratic talking points, alienated over half the country. I look forward to asking leaders of both organizations to explain to the American people why they should continue receiving their hard-earned money. And we heard this. If you haven't seen the hearings on the 26th, this is just basically, to that point. And remember, PBS as a whole, the main corp itself, the PBS network, they have to fund the smaller sections of themselves, like WNYC is it WNET, that's New York, Channel 13 here in New York, and many others throughout the country. But remember, it's basically to get the programming, the independent stations throughout the country have to pay PBS head to get that programming. So it's kind of a circular motion that the money goes right back. The expenditures that they give to the smaller networks comes right back to PBS itself. Remember this little perspective. The federal government only offers 15% of the total whole what PBS is funded. Remember that situation. This fluctuates and changes. From that, the public broadcasters give about 4%, universities give about 8%, foundations 10%, businesses give 12%, local state give about 13%, individuals give 31%. Remember that perspective. Think to that perspective. And this changed constantly. But when it comes to the numbers with the federal government does give, but not to the point where it's like completely, that basically they cover all the costs. It's only a percentile. And yes, they have the the right to ask, where is this money going? And it should be. In the last decade or two, PBS has not been PBS. Look at the shows that are on. Look at the content that they have. And they said like, well, we need the money to put all these kids shows in. There are tons of kids shows on YouTube, Pluto TV, Tubi TV, and many others that are free. Has commercials, but that are free. Some of the YouTube ones on the children's end don't have commercials. They're funded, but they don't have commercials. And they can watch those shows to their heart's content. Stuff like Coco Melon. Right now at that Senate subcommittee hearing, they were talking about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. You won't be able to watch Mr. Pluto TV has about 3 seasons of it. Free. Available, on there. And several other places you can get Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. YouTube TV has a premium subscription. Amazon, Prime Video. Of course, PBS Kids has episodes, obviously, on there. Hulu also has it on their systems as well, which I believe that's a premium subscription itself, too, which you might have to pay extra depending on where it's coming from. But, all in all, Pluto on there. I mean, there are many different kids shows out there. And there are many companies creating new kids shows that are more toward the educational end of the situation, even from Japan itself. There are Japanese anime that are geared for little children. Surprisingly, I'm surprised it hasn't kicked on very well into here. I mean, there are some places on there, like you'll see Tubi TV carries a Anapanana Man. And there's a couple of others out there hanging out there that's basically could be dubbed for kids. It's basically standard education. I mean, we have anime that teaches certain things out there. I mean, we had the anime series Cells at Work, which is a little violent to the situation, but it did teach the human body. There are ways of doing it. And the thing is that, honestly, PBS's time, it's coming to an end. Unless they rebuild themselves to what they used to be. The standards that PBS was built on many years ago when I was a child. That they had some great shows. That they had a lot of educational stuff that I learned a lot from it. Which now is deemed either racist, misogynist, or from a different time period that basically should not be taught. It's children. You're teaching children. It's that now they, look at the education standards right now with what's going on right now. This is why the Department of Education, they're beginning to shut it down. We're in 32nd? I mean, we got kids, even here in New York, we got kids who can't properly read, write, or do mathematics at their grade level. We have kids being pushed from grammar school to middle school to high school to college that don't deserve to be there yet. because they basically don't have the education that they were supposed to get, but they were just fast-tracked through on there. You could look at the New York City schools. You could look at the Baltimore school system. Especially Baltimore, how bad the Baltimore school system is, that, even the local networks have just given a lot of time to talk about this. Like I said, when I was, and this was in Catholic school, we had PBS, we watched PBS television. We were given programming to watch certain shows, to educate. In my time period growing up in the school systems, teachers spent time teaching children. And if they couldn't do it, they try to put them aside and have other teachers group them together and work with them one by one, trying to get them through the grade level. That's not being done now these days. Now that, they're trying to push these agendas with basically, if you don't feel in your body, maybe you're not a boy, you're not a girl to this situation. That's not something kids should be hearing at that point, at that age level in grammar school. They shouldn't be getting books talking about sex, talking about, doing certain bad things to each other, and people says, well, no, the books, you're trying to ban the books. It has nothing to do with banning. You want to buy those books for your kids to have them watch? That's up to you as a parent. It's not banning them. It's not like what they did to Dr. Seuss on several of the books, which are now unavailable unless you find an older print, which you're going to pay a lot for. And why was it removed? Because people didn't like the caricatures that were made, the drawings, the way characters looked. It was very, very racist. It's a caricature. It's a fantasy world. It's not there. It's there to have fun, to have a story sent out to you. And that's the thing. A lot of the Dr. Seuss were. But the books that are being put out these days, I mean, oh my God. My mom would have flipped out if someone gave me a book to read that said some of the things in some of these books. And if she saw some of the stuff that was on PBS this night for kids, she turned the TV off. Because they're driven agendas. That's not education. There were independent organizations, nonprofits, that basically sat there and taught children how to read, how to write, taught them history, taught them stories from all over the world. Do they do that now? No. No, not at all. Does PBS does this? No. Not like it used to be. That's what people don't get. We're not talking about NPR off to the side, and that's a different story. That's the same story, different situations. But the PBS end of it is you have programming on there for kids to adults. You have news, you're carrying news. You should be very biased, especially in the news. What happens if your independent funding from your viewers stop coming in? Shuts you down completely. Because that's the largest amount of money you get is from individuals. Because it's the individuals that buys your shows. Because you hear it all the time. Right now, hurry up. Get on that phone, dial it. Give us what you are. We'll give you this tote bag. You help support great performances for this month. We'll be able to show you, La Boheme, or we'll be able to give you an episode of Upstairs, Downstairs, because that's the way it used to be. Today, I don't even watch PBS anymore. I really, truly don't, because I don't find anything interesting anymore on that channel. PBS, now for me now it's MeTV these days, but PBS used to be my go-to channel. Like I said, they had science fiction on there. A lot of young people were introduced. Besides WWOR Channel 9, they were introduced to Doctor Who. Those who were out of the Dark Shadows era that basically never saw it on the first run got to introduce to Dark Shadows, Star Cops, Blake 7, Flash Gordon, conquers the universe on there. Many other shows that were, that Red Dwarf, that's another one. Red Dwarf was shown on there. Faulty Towers, Monty Python. These were great shows. But most of those shows you can now watch on YouTube or several other streaming sites. Like I said, PBS needs to rebuild itself. Go back to the old school education, the arts, education and the arts. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. So comment. Let me know your thoughts about this. Tell me, are you happy with PBS or should it go away? Does Sesame Street need a new home? Yeah, it does. Can we get it a new home? Will it go back to PBS or maybe Tubi TV or one of the other streaming sites might end up picking it up for a good bargain? Let me know. Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So until next time, thank you for tuning in, and bye-bye now.